All right, so now we're going to talk about a very important concept which we're going to see several times throughout the semester. In microeconomics, it's a very important conversation understanding the difference between what we call the short run and the long run in a firm. Now, it's not the short run and the long run doesn't have anything to do with time frame. Okay, so for example, oftentimes in accounting we have the short run and the long run as being, the short run is in days and months, the long run is in more than a year. Okay, well in economics, the short run and the long run are more like decision-making periods. For example, in the same building, at the same time, you can have two groups of managers. One of them is talking about the short run, and one of them is talking about the long run. One group is making decisions in the short run. One of them is making decisions in the long run, even though they're doing it at the same time. Now, we're going to take our example that we had with the company that had 5 machines, and they're producing the product out of wood by employing the workers. And we're going to use that example to understand the short run versus the long run. So what the circumstance that we first set up, where we said this company has 5 machines, and if they run those 5 machines on 2 shifts, they can employ 30 workers maximum. They can use 70 bags of wood maximum per day, and they can produce 1,000 units per day maximum. Okay? All of that, these are the restrictions in the short run. The short run is always restricted in decision making. In the short run, this firm can decide, you know what, we're going to shut down 2 of the machines, we're only going to have 9 employees at a time, and we're going to run 2 shifts. And therefore, they will then employ 18 out of the 30 possible workers. That's a short run decision. That would then mean that they were only producing 600 units. That's a short-run decision. They can produce anywhere between 0 and 1,000 units in the short run. And they're going to make short-run decisions to try and maximize their profit, given their fixed set of circumstances. Okay? That is the short run. Okay? In the long run, they are not restricted by their 5 machines. In the long run, they can change their fixed circumstances. There is no fixed circumstance in the long run. In the long run, they can buy more of the machines. They can increase or decrease the number of the machines, which will change their limits on the number of workers, bags, and their quantity. So, in the long run, they can change the limits on their variable costs and their quantities by buying more machines or selling off some of their machines. They can also change the process entirely. They can stop using machines and have the product entirely made just by labor. They can also change the process to where the entire process is automated, where they don't need any labor at all. They can have the machines do the entire process. So in the long run, you can change your the number of machines you have. You can also change the way you do it. You can change the product itself. You can stop selling the product that you have sold for 20 years. Let's say that you used to sell desks. Well, you can just stop making desks and you can start making staplers if you want to. You can completely change the product that you sell. You can stop making your product out of wood and start making it out of plastic if you want to. That is a long-run decision, okay? You can change location. Well, we've always had this manufacturing plant in Philadelphia. We've been operating here for over 70 years. Well, you can close down that plant and you can open up a plant in Mexico if you want to. That is a long-run decision. You can even stop doing business altogether. You can just close down the business and say, we're not in business anymore, shut the doors, everybody gets laid off, and the owner of the company retires. Those are long-run decisions. In the long run, there are no limitations at all to any of the decisions that can be made, because in the long run there are no fixed resources. And now we're going to get into more details on those two ideas. So let's talk about the short run first, okay? So here's a definition for the short run in microeconomics. The short run is a circumstance or state of planning in which a firm has fixed costs that restrict or limit decision making and limit production and profit, okay? So that is the short run. We are in a situation where we're just making decisions around our fixed costs. So the short run is kind of like, okay, look, here's my bedroom. You know, there's a window over here. There's a door over there. There's another door over here for the closet. I only have so much wall space. Where am I going to put my bed? Where am I going to put my dresser? Now the good news is, in the short run, I can change the size of my bed. If I have a king size bed and it just won't fit in the room, I can get a smaller bed because the bed isn't that expensive. What I can't do is I can't move the doors and I can't move the window. I can't make new wall space to be able to hang posters and that sort of thing. I only have so much room for hanging posters. If I decide to put a bookshelf over here, I can't put posters over there, and therefore we are limited by the shape of the room, the square footage of the room, and around those limitations we can decide where to put the furniture. Similarly, our company, UGI Corporation, right, they are limited by the fact that they have exactly 5 machines. They can only hire so many people. They can only buy so many wood chips. They can only supply up to 1,000 units a day because they are limited by their fixed resources. In the short run, fixed resources, they can't be altered, okay? We can shut down a machine, but we can't make the machine go away. We're stuck with the machine. The reason that fixed resources can't be altered is usually because those fixed resources are very expensive and we're in the middle of making payments on those expensive resources, okay? So because we're still paying for them, we can't do anything about them other than have them there and use them as best we can. And also, in the short run, oftentimes we have long-term contracts. If we have committed to stay in a particular retail location for 10 years, we can't leave that retail location until our lease is up, and then at the end of 10 years, we can then leave and go to another location. Also, sometimes you'll have a long-term contract with some employees. If you have contracted with some information technology employees to do a job over 2 years, you have to pay them for that 2 years. If you decide you want to fire them, you still have to pay them for the 2 years, so you may as well use them, okay? So under long-term contracts, and also expensive. Now, in the short run, only variable resources can be increased or decreased. We can increase our workers up to 30. We can decrease our workers down to 0. We can increase the number of bags per day that we buy up to 70 or down to 0, but that's it, okay? We are limited by our fixed resources. Now, because we have fixed costs in the short run, our total costs are determined by variable cost plus fixed cost, as we learned, right? This is our formula for total cost, but you're going to see that it's now different when we get to the long run. Average total cost, very similar, is equal to average variable cost plus average fixed cost, okay? And therefore, a couple things here. Because we have fixed costs, variable costs are always going to be less than total cost, okay? Total cost will always be a larger number than variable costs. Similarly, because we have average fixed cost, average variable cost will always be a smaller number than average total cost. Of course, if average fixed cost approaches 0, average variable cost will approach average total cost mathematically. Last thing we're going to say about the short run is, in the short run, the firm is limited by its size. It will not be larger than it is, and it can be smaller, but really, if you're going to be smaller, you may as well just go out of business, right? Okay, but you can't compete, with 5 machines, you can't compete with a company that has 73 machines. I mean, you can compete with them in the sense that you can sell what they sell, but you can't think that you're going to be earning the profit that they earn on their level. They have 73 machines. Your size is restricted to only 5 machines. A firm is limited by its location. Let's say that you own a pizzeria, right, on the south side of town, right? You're not going to deliver pizza on the north side of town. You know, it takes 40 minutes to drive there. So you're not going to deliver pizza. You're not going to do any business on the north end of town because you are limited by your fixed resources that are all at the south end of town. Okay, so you are limited by your location. You're not going to move in the short run. You're also limited by your product, okay? You can make minor adjustments to the product. If you make pizza, you can add a new topping. You can tell everybody, hey, you know, now we have pineapple. We'll put pineapple on your pizza. But what I'm saying is, you know, in the short run, you're not going to stop making pizza and start making, you know, steaks or something like that, okay? You're not getting rid of your pizza oven and bringing in a charcoal grill in the short run. Okay, those are fixed resources, and we're not changing our fixed resources in the short run. Okay, all right, so this is the short run. Now let's talk about the long run. All right, now let's talk about the long run. Here's our definition for the long run. It's a circumstance or state of planning in which decision making in a firm is not constrained by any fixed costs, making it free to redefine its fixed resources and its strategy. This is a time when leaders come together and they think to themselves, anything is possible, what can we do? We can shut down all of our operations, move to other countries, reopen, change our product, change our size. We can stop selling to consumers and we can start selling to other businesses. We can change anything. That is the circumstance in the long run. A business can completely redefine what it is in the long run. Now, I'm sure most businesses don't go to those extremes in the long run. In many cases, businesses in the long run just sort of, you know, grow, or they open a new location in other places. They just sort of expand, okay? These are the kinds of things that you would learn about in a strategy class, a class on policy and planning for a business. Usually that's the capstone course for a business degree, okay? Now, in the long run, a firm has no fixed resources. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have their 5 machines. What I'm saying is that when they're in the room thinking in the long run, when they're in the state of planning, in decision making, they're thinking to themselves, let's forget about the fact that we are stuck with these 5 machines. Let's think about a world where we can get rid of the 5 machines or double up the machines, or we can go from 5 up to 70 machines if we want to. We can bring on investors in the long run. We can take all their money and we can increase from 5 machines up to 150 machines possibly. We can open up, 3 more locations over the next 5 years. Okay, this is, we're not, constraining ourselves. We're pretending that we have no fixed resources so that we can think broader and make any kind of decision. In the long run, there are no contracts constraining us, no leases, no labor contracts, none of that constraining us. There are no payments on debt. We're in a place where we are not thinking about our payments on our machines. We're thinking, okay, assuming we've paid off the machines, now what can we do? Okay? All right, in the long run, even expensive capital is variable. We can think to ourselves, hey, well, what if we had 7 machines? Okay, what if we had 8 machines? Okay, what if we had 9 machines? Okay, so we can have a column where our fixed resources, instead of being in the fixed cost column, they're actually in the variable cost column, because all of the resources, even the expensive ones, are variable. All resources and costs are variable in the long run. And because there are no fixed costs in the long run, total cost is equal to variable cost. It's the same number. There is no variable cost plus fixed cost because fixed costs are 0. We have no fixed costs. Therefore, in the long run, total cost is equal to variable cost. Similarly, In the long run, average total cost is equal to average variable cost. They are the same number because all of the costs in the long run are variable costs. Lastly, in the long run, a firm has no limits and can change. They can change the size of the company. They can make the company larger. They can go from 5 machines up to 40 machines. They can make the company smaller. They could go from 5 machines down to 2 machines if they want to. They can change their location. If you got your pizzeria in the south end of the city, you could make a couple decisions. One, you could say, hey, let's open up a second pizzeria on the north end. Now we can deliver to all the people on the north end. Or you can say, hey, we don't really like this location anymore. Let's close the south location. We will not renew our lease. Let's find a location on the north end of the city. We'll find a retail location and we'll sign a 5-year lease up there, and then we can start delivering pizza to the people on the north end. Okay? They can change their location. They even go from one country to another country. And lastly, in the long run, firms can completely change their products. Like I said, they can stop making their product out of plastic and they can start making their product out of steel. They can stop making pencils and they can start making cameras if they want to. In the long run, a company can completely change the products that they sell, the products that they can produce. They can even stop making the product, the make or buy decision. They can stop making the product and they can contract with another company that has the machines and just buy the product from that company and then be the middleman and sell it to someone else. So there's anything that you can do. You can sell everything, you can get rid of everything, you can double up on everything, you can triple up on everything in the long run. And that's the big difference between the short run and the long run. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about in terms of short run and long run is we're going to talk about how the short run and the long run changes the way a firm looks at profit and loss that they are experiencing in their business. Okay, so we've got profit and loss in the short run and long run. All right, so let's talk about the short run first and we'll talk about profit. Well, we'll talk about profit and first we'll address it in the short run. In the short run, if a company is profiting, that profit can be sustained. If they're in the short run, they can just keep doing business and earning that profit, positive profit, just keep scooping it in, okay? Because here's the issue. People who would want to take away that profit, the way that businesses take away profit from other businesses is by moving into their markets and competing directly with them. So if I have a burger restaurant and I'm making profit and another burger restaurant moves in right across the street, some of the people who would come get a burger from me are now going to go get a burger from that burger restaurant across the street, and I will lose some of my profit, okay? But in the short run, see, opening up a burger restaurant across the street, that's a long run decision. And since we're in the short run, that company, there aren't going to be any competitors moving into my market, okay? So competitors cannot enter your market so you can sustain the profits you're earning. But in the long run, profits do not last, okay? The reason that profits do not last is because now in the long run, competitors can invest fixed resources in your profitable market. They can move in to your market and they can take some of your customers and some of your profit with them. Okay? And so big difference between the short run and the long run. Generally speaking, in the long run, profits do not last. Now you might be thinking, well then why in the world do business if profits don't last in the long run? Well, what we're talking about here is economic profit, not accounting profit. And we'll explain that a little more later, okay? But the idea here is that typically profits do not last in the long run because competitors will always move in and take away some of your profit. All right, lastly, let's talk about losses. In the short run, if a firm is experiencing a loss, if their total costs are higher than their total revenues, well, you might say, well, they should just shut down, right? Maybe, but only in a very rare situation should they actually shut down. See, in the short run, a firm can endure losses. Losses can be endured in the short run. Why? Well, firms, they still have to cover their fixed costs. If they just shut down, they still got to pay their rent on their retail location. They're under a 5-year contract, a 5-year lease. If they're still paying off machines that they bought, they got to still make the payments on those machines. They can't just default on those loans. That could get them in big trouble, and they could be sued by the bank that made the loan. And therefore, because they have fixed costs to cover, they can't afford to quit. If they keep doing business, even if it's not enough to cover all of the costs, they can at least cover some of the costs, keep doing business, endure through the losses, and maybe in the short run there might be a change to prices or something like that, or they might improve the way they're doing business in the short run and move from a loss to a profit, or at least to a break-even situation. What about in the long run? In the long run, losses are not acceptable. In the long run, if you're planning for the future and you're in a market and already you know that you're losing in that market, why commit more resources to it? Get out. In the long run, you can get out. In the long run, you can close down. In the long run, you can move somewhere else. In the long run, you can change your products. You can become smaller if you need to. Or maybe becoming larger will actually put you in a place where you're not losing anymore. Okay? But then that would move you up here to profits. But if loss is what you're facing and your company is in the long run decision making, losses are not acceptable. Because there are no fixed costs, okay, that you shouldn't be, don't commit to an already losing situation. You should just go ahead and leave the market, okay? And so here is the different ways that firms look at profit and loss, whether they're dealing with the short run or the long run.